Hello, here we are again with our friend Swami Rama and talking about Mandukya Upanishad in his text where his discussion is entitled Enlightenment Without God. And we're still going through the introduction section before we get started on the actual discussion of the 12 verses of Mandukya Upanishad on Om. And what we have on tap here now is a really fun and very interesting discussion that this section is entitled What God Is. Swami Rama says to us, all the religions of the world have been promising the vision of God, mental peace, salvation, and many kinds of temptations to their followers. But so far, nothing has come true. The more that people are involved in sectarian religious activities, the more likely they are to become disappointed because of frustrated expectations of God and religion. Many preachers claim that if their teachings are followed without question, believers will find salvation. But after they return from their church or temple, they are frequently more stressed, frustrated, and worried about their problems than are non-believers. Hi, Nellie. Hi, Roz. Mere belief in God alone does not satisfy the students of life who are searching for ultimate truth, capital U, capital T. Suppose a student believes in the existence of God, but is not emotionally mature and does not have a peaceful mind. Such a student does not have tranquility and equanimity, which are the main prerequisites for enlightenment. On the path of enlightenment, it is necessary to have control over the senses and mind, but it is not necessary to have belief in God. Enlightenment is a state of freedom from the ignorance, Matri says, free. Enlightenment is a state of freedom from the ignorance that causes suffering, and attaining this is the prime necessity of every human life. There is no necessity to attain, hi Johnny, there is no necessity to attain mere belief in God, but it is necessary to have profound knowledge of the truth which lies behind the concept of the word God. The truth which lies behind the concept. The word God is not God. The religionists, because they superimpose their own limited fantasies upon the truth and call it God, suffer more than the people who do not believe in the concept of God. If ultimate truth is called God, then there is no difficulty. Then it can be practiced with mind, action, and speech, and once the truth is known with mind, action, and speech, knowledge is complete. But having faith in the fantasies of the religionists creates limited boundaries for the human intellect and leads to a religious atmosphere in which the poor followers must suffer until the last breaths of their life. And hi again, Jamie, and hi, Miranda.
I'm here.
Though religious dogma tempts the human mind with promises of the vision of God, it does not clarify and define the concept of God. The way religious books present the picture of God is injurious to human growth, for one who believes in God without understanding what God really is closes the door to further knowledge and learning and cannot experience the inner dimensions of life. Such false promises are strongly discouraged in the Upanishads, which warn, quote, neti, neti, not this, not this. The student is made aware of the need to understand the reality and is encouraged to search for truth within. The Upanishads inspire one first to know oneself and then to know the self of all, capital S self. Upanishadic literature makes one aware that every being embodied in a physical sheath is a moving shrine of supreme consciousness. It also provides methods for entering the shrine, wherein shines the infinite light of knowledge, peace, and happiness. Prayer is a major technique used by religionists to seek satisfaction of their desires and comfort in spite of their frustrations. Hi, Roz. Many people who are not acquainted with the basic principles of Vedantic philosophy think that there are prayers in the Upanishadic literature. For example, lead me from the unreal to the real, lead me from darkness to light, lead me from mortality to immortality, may be thought to be a prayer, but it is actually an expression of the aspirant's spiritual desires that remind him of his goal of life constantly. There's that word constant again. It is not a prayer, but a way of maintaining constant awareness of supreme consciousness. It is not asking God or any supernatural being to help one or to lead one to the higher states. The idea is not to know God as a different being, but to know one's own real self and its essential nature, which is the self of all. One is not attaining something that is not already there, but is realizing that which is self-existent. This Upanishadic verse is not a prayer asking for anything, but a way of strengthening constant awareness of supreme consciousness, which is the goal of the Upanishads. Dualism is the preliminary experience of a contemplative mind. All religions suffer on account of dualistic concepts, such as human beings are a creation of God, the universe is a creation of God, human beings have no choice but to suffer and should delight in their sufferings at the mercy of God. These concepts are illogical when they are analyzed with clarity of mind and pure reason. In the course of study, a student first experiences dualism, the reality that he exists and the supreme consciousness also exists. A state comes when he experiences thou art that. These two fields of experience appear to be different, but they are essentially one and the same. These are the progressive states that aspirants experience, but as far as absolute reality is concerned, there is only one without a second. Religionists say the ultimate goal of human life is to know God, and materialists say it is to eat, drink, and be merry. Hi, Marydell. Hi, Scott. Eat, drink, and be merry. But the philosophy of the Upanishads asserts that the ultimate goal is to be free from all pain and misery whatsoever. This state of freedom from anxieties, miseries, and ignorance is called enlightenment. It is the union of the individual with universal consciousness. Religionists say that one has to have faith in the saying of the scriptures and in the way they are preached. But in Upanishadic philosophy, the mind is released from all religious prejudices so that one can think and reason freely. The Upanishads declare that even the best of intellects is incapable of fathoming the unfathomable, and that learning the scriptures is not the ultimate way of realization. On the path of enlightenment, even the lust for learning must eventually be abandoned. Note here that the idea that says that learning scriptures is not the ultimate way of realization. Now, if we call the Mandukya Upanishad a scripture, I don't know what you want to call it, but studying this book that we're going through and studying these 12 verses is not going to bring realization. It's not going to bring enlightenment. But this is like a cookbook. These 12 verses are like a recipe, and cookbooks are used in the kitchen, and from that you make lunch. These verses, this stuff we're looking at, are like a cookbook. It's a recipe, and the recipe is to be used in the kitchen called life. So it's an instruction manual. It doesn't mean that by reading the book, we gain the realization, we gain enlightenment. We follow the instructions, we do the practices, we cultivate self-awareness and this notion of constant awareness, and then the goodies come. On the path of enlightenment, even the lust for learning must eventually be abandoned. Now, if we are learning what we're doing here, not for the purpose of learning more data, more information to pass an examination in a university class, if we're doing it for that reason, we're trapped. But if we're doing it so that we can internally learn how to cultivate self-awareness and how to see these levels of consciousness so that we can do that sadhana internally of remembering mantra and doing dhyana meditation and doing vichara contemplation, if we're using it in that way, then we are using this recipe book as a way to learn how to unlearn all of my false identities. A very different orientation, isn't it? In some of the Upanishads, the word Isha or Ishvara, which is roughly translated as God, appears. That's because when they take those words and they shop around English language, what words did they come up with? Well, they don't have the concept of Isha or Ishvara. We don't have that concept in our language, so the closest word they could come up with is God. And so then we naturally project onto that word Isha or Ishvara all of our cultural meanings for what that word God means, and we get ourselves confused. So we do stuff like we're doing now to try to unconfuse ourselves and get to the root of it. But the concept of God as preached by religion is not found in the Upanishads. Not found here. In the Upanishads, the word Ishvara is used to denote a state of collective consciousness. Thus, God is not a being that sits on a high pedestal beyond the sun, moon, and stars. God is actually the state of ultimate reality. But due to the lack of direct experience, God has been personified and given various names and forms by religions throughout the ages. When one expands one's individual consciousness to the universal consciousness, it is called self-realization, for the individual self has realized the unity of diversity. The very underlying principle or universal self beneath all forms and names. Free, says Scott. Good point. Yes. Nice analogies, huh, Ross? The great sages of the Upanishads avoid the confusions related to conceptions of God, and encourage students to be honest and sincere in their quests for self-realization. Upanishadic philosophy provides various methods for unfolding higher levels of truth and helps students to be able to unravel the mysteries of the individual and the universe. Knowledge of Brahma Vidya, the direct experience of the Supreme Consciousness, is the common theme of all Upanishadic literature. I am Brahma. The whole universe is Brahma. Thou art that. And note here that the religionists will look at these texts and this word Brahman and say things like, oh, the name of their God is Brahma. That's not what the word Brahman is. It's not the name of a deity. It's just a word. It's like if we use the metaphor that Brahman is like the ocean of consciousness. You go out to the ocean just beside us here is called the Gulf of Mexico. We're not quite near Mexico, but they call it the Gulf of Mexico. That's the name of it. But it's just an ocean. So the word Brahman is not the name of a being God. It's just a word that is used. Now, in convention, I don't know the academia about this, how they come up with this, but in the conventional way of writing language in so-called spiritual stuff with big words, important words, is you put a capital letter in front of it. So when you put the Brahman there, you put capital B-R-A-H-M-A-N. Well, it makes it look like a proper name. It makes it look like it's the name of a being. Well, it's not. Very commonly when you see somebody write about yoga, they write capital Y-O-G-A, sometimes lowercase y-O-G-A. I'm just saying that the grammatical convention of taking some words and putting a capital uppercase letter on it can give us a misleading idea that there is a being there and he is a him in a place called heaven or somewhere, and that his name is Brahma. I'm just saying that repeatedly to be aware that that's a trap and that's not what we're talking about. I am Brahman. The whole universe is Brahman. Thou art that. Such statements are the foundations for all its theories, principles, and practices. All philosophical and psychological discussions are meant to make students aware of their true nature, Brahman, the Supreme Consciousness. Now, these statements, I am Brahman, which is Aham Brahmasmi, these are known as Mahavakyas. They are the great contemplations, and they're very, 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 very useful to know and practice. And if you haven't already taken a look at it, take a look at the course we put together that is on contemplation, called Jnana Yoga, the Yoga of Contemplation. And we talk in there about, hopefully in practical terms, 7 of the most core, most famous, most important Mahavakyas. All philosophical and psychological discussions are meant to make students aware of their true nature, Brahman, the Supreme Consciousness. For a realized one, there is perennial joy in the universe. But for the ignorant, there is only misery everywhere. The moment a student realizes his essential nature, the darkness of ignorance is dispelled. But before that, the individual mind travels to the groove of self-created misery and thus projects the belief that there is misery everywhere. In reality, this universe is like a great poem of joy, a beautiful song, and a unique work of art. The moment one unfolds and realizes one's human capacity and ability, one becomes aware of that. Thou art that, Brahma. Here lies the difference between a self-realized person and a religionist. The religionist does not know and yet believes in God. but the realized person is directly aware of the self-existent ultimate reality of life and the universe. First, he knows the truth, and then he believes it. Listen to that. First, he knows the truth, and then he believes it. If God is the ultimate truth hidden behind many forms and names, then it should be realized. And for realizing the capital T truth with mind, action, and speech, one needs to practice truth rather than being a hypocrite and a fanatic. It is not necessary to believe in God to attain self-enlightenment, but it is very necessary to know the various levels of consciousness and finally to realize the ultimate source. The manifest aspect and the unmanifest aspect of consciousness, Brahman, should be realized, for that alone can enlighten aspirants. Okay, that's the end of that section. We have 3 more pages of this introduction to this text, and we'll do that next time. And then we'll dive into the discussions on each of the 12 verses, if that's okay. So we could press on here, but I'd rather not press on and let these other couple pages stand alone there. So that was the part that is Swami Rama's ideas, thoughts on what God is. And then you and I each get to ponder these things and decide for ourselves what makes most sense to me, to my buddhi, to my intelligence, to my conscience. What makes sense to me? And then when it makes sense to you, then it doesn't matter that you're borrowing the concept from the rishis or the sages or from Swami Rama or from anybody else. Then you've internalized it and you, so to speak, own it. This is what we want to do with this stuff, okay? So we'll pause here and do the last 3 pages another time and then dive into the 12 verses. Isn't this exciting stuff? Yeah. Thanks for playing, Marydell. Everybody. Thanks for playing, Roz. See you all later. To be continued. I guess the next time I'm on here with you is tomorrow night. We will go on with, is tomorrow night Yoga Sutras or Bhagavad Gita? I think it may be, it's one of the two. I'll have to double check. To be continued. Om, Nellie. Nellie says Om. There's a nice little Om to end with. A nice little Om from Nellie. Okay. Thank you for playing. Bye-bye. In honor of Duchies and Matri, who's here with us. Now, we have her captive here for a little while. We've stolen her from the Duchies. But in honor of Matri and the Duchies, Dewey.